Awesome.
Thanks,
So
Jess.
for anyone who's logging on and joining us, I see a bunch of participants logging on as we speak. We're here with our friends Kate and Anastasia, both superstars of the hospitality industry. Kate is a restaurateur and designer in Charleston, South Carolina, and Anastasia is the same in Miami. And so we're just catching up with them the past few minutes, kind of hearing how they're doing with all the spikes that are happening in the Southeast and across the country right now. And they are going to let you in on how they've been surviving COVID, running their hospitality businesses, which is a daunting task.
As more and more people join, I should have asked Anastasia this like 7 years ago, but can you give me the official perfect pronunciation of your last name?
I noticed you skipped over that one.
Yeah.
Koutsioukis.
Koutsioukis. It's exactly how it's spelled. I always say that I became a good speller because of my long name.
It's actually very phonetic.
Yeah, it
It
is.
feels scary.
Yeah, it looks intimidating. That Greek last name looks very intimidating.
Those Greek last names, I tell you.
Anastasia Koutsioukis and Kate Towill. Again, Kate's at home in Charleston right now. Anastasia's at home in Miami. They both have incredible restaurants. So when everyone starts getting on airplanes again, Basic Kitchen and Mandolin, two of our favorite restaurants in the country. So put them on your list for when we can start traveling again.
Yeah.
Amazing. So just for anybody who's joining, Lizzie and I are so excited to have you. This is going to be one of our last few Creative Women's Coffees before we take a maternity hiatus, and then we'll be back in September. But all of these will
Yay.
saving the best for last. All of these will continue to live on our website and our IG. So please share with your friends. Jessie Randall is on. Hi, Jessie, another former Creative Women's Coffee participant. And for anybody who's new to this, gallery mode is the best way to see all three speakers at once. Chime in on chat if you have any questions as we go through. And I know people are still joining, but without further ado, let's start this thing off.
Cool.
Okay, great. Yes.
Okay, so quick intro, you guys. For any of you who follow us on Instagram, you know how food and design obsessed Catherine and I are, and we're always looking to friends like Anastasia and Kate for inspiration. These two are superstars. They're restaurateurs, but they're also designers, and they really are incredible because they create spaces that make you feel so at home and make you never want to leave. Anastasia's restaurant, Mandolin, is actually the restaurant where we hosted Kate's bachelorette party. And it was one of those perfect lunches where you could stay for 6 hours and not leave because you're having the time of your life. And even though you're in Miami's design district, you feel like you're on a Greek island, and it is completely transportive. Kate does the same with the spaces that she decorates. She works with residential and commercial spaces, and they really transform you. Every time Catherine and I visit one of her spaces, transport you, yes, excuse me, baby brain. We leave wanting to go home and renovate our own apartments. So these girls have some tricks up their sleeve when it comes to design and creativity, which we hope they'll share with you all today. They also both run restaurants, and so they're gonna let us in on how that is going in the time of COVID.
They've also been spending, both of them, a lot of time in their respective homes, which might be one of the silver linings of the past 3 months, with 6 and 3-year-old sons, respectively, for Anastasia and Kate. So we'll hear a little bit about how they've incorporated inspiration from home, still being moms with sort of business life, and figuring out sort of how to balance everything at once. So we will kick it off, and I know people are still joining, so please feel free to chime in with questions as we go through, but we're going to kick it off with our first question. Kate, we're going to start with you, just for people who are less familiar with your career. A lot of people know Basic Kitchen. If they've been to Charleston, it's kind of like a obvious stop on the trail these days of restaurants to go to in Charleston, but that's a little bit more Ben, your husband's sort of bag of tricks. You are in the restaurant and you helped design the restaurant, but you also are a designer in your own right of other residential commercial spaces. You started your career 15 years ago as a set decorator. You did Moonrise Kingdom, you've done music videos, you've done other movies, and so your attention to detail is absolutely incredible. Can you explain a little bit about how you've taken your experience and what you bring to a project? How do you start sourcing? How do you start inspiration? Does everything begin with a single reference or mood board?
Yes. So let's think. Definitely the set world was such a great education for me, because I was the detail that you have to, understand, and the sourcing of whatever era you're doing the movie is huge. But I'd say the biggest thing is this idea of, not everything needs to be perfect, and everything it's not every single piece that has to match, because that feels too designy. It's definitely been so cool to, the film sets have definitely taught me that, like, it's more of how everything makes it feel. So we just finished a project, which I know we're going to talk about a bit further on, but it's this 7-bedroom inn, and it has a restaurant on the bottom floor, and there's this really cool, gorgeous, like, dining space above the restaurant. And I really wanted it to feel grown up, and, kind of like your cool granny made this space. And so I wrote some notes, so I want to make sure I'm getting everything right. So we made the walls this, like, kind of off pink, and, when you look at all these details by themselves, it's like not cute. But then when everything comes together, you're like, oh wow, this feels literally like my, traveled grandma made this cool old dining space. So we even did these curtains that I really wanted this, like, vintage Ralph Lauren rose fabric, 'cause it's called the Rose Room, and couldn't afford even like a yard of the fabric. So this was back in my set days where we had, like, the tiniest budgets, and you just made it work. And so I found this fabric, like, at the local fabric store, and I think it was like $15 a yard. But if you look at it, just in a vacuum, it's also not cute. But then when everything is up, it really feels like, this, like, old lived-in space. So a long way of saying the set world definitely taught me that not every piece has to be perfect and match, because I hate when homes feel like they've been done by an interior designer. It's much better when everything feels a bit found and, like, a touch off, because that's just more relatable.
I love that. I
don't
think,
know
I
if
think
that answers it.
who's spending a lot of time at home right now, and, like, maybe isn't 100% happy with their space. It doesn't all have to match perfectly. That lived-in vibe is so cool. And that lived-in vibe is also something that Anastasia brings to her spaces. She's talked to Catherine and me before about how she's not technically the chef, yet she has created this space that is, like, the coolest restaurant space in the world. So Anastasia,
and I just to elaborate on that, I feel like when we met Anastasia, I kept wanting to pigeonhole her as the face of Mandolin, and she kept saying, maybe I'm the face, but, like, to be clear, I'm not a chef. I might be in the restaurant world. And you kind of kept sort of, maybe it's the female in all of us to to be very humble and modest, because to me you are Mandolin, Anastasia. But but can you talk a little bit about sort of the same thing? How have you brought your magic into both a restaurant and an accompanying design store with Mrs. Mandolin? What is it that you sort of do first when you're thinking about a space like that?
Well, I mean, going back to what you guys started to say, first of all, I can't believe that we all met each other together at Kate's bachelor.
I know.
Stay in touch and continue to watch each other grow in in our cities and root each other on. But much like Kate, I kind of married into being the restaurant world, if you will. So I met Amit in New York, and he was a restaurant guy. I actually picked him up at his restaurant. So I call myself. So one other thing, Kate, to add to our list of many things in common. So I
know so much in common.
Accidental restaurateur. I'm an accidental restaurateur. It wasn't intentional, but food's always been a big part of my life, and I love to cook, and it was in a creative expression, really. But I'm a closeted designer. I'm not really a trained designer either, but I love everything about that part of the world. And I think it kind of came as an advantage when we were opening Mandolin that I wasn't trained in that industry, because I was able to think of the space in a very residential way. So I was like, so how would I build this space if it was my dream Greek island home? And that's kind of where we started. And we also, moving from New York and being a startup ourselves and kind of whole mom and pop approach to this. We didn't have any money, like zero. So having a limited budget also allowed us to really be quite resourceful. And that adds to the patina and the warmth to the space. And so now some of those moments are really like those mandolin moments, as we talk about it or refer to it, is just like one of those kind of happy mistakes, if you will, you know? And I think that's like, especially when it comes to a specific type of restaurant, like a Greek restaurant, what I didn't want it to be was to look too thematic, because, you know, it could easily, like, it's cliche, you know, it's blue and white. And we even used a Benji Moore paint that's called Athens Blue. And I'm like, oh my God, this could either go this way or this way. And fortunately, you know, I think because we looked at it as truly the way that we would use our home or entertain at home, is why it has that spirit. And it's maintained that spirit. Even when we got to a point like that 7-year mark, when it was time to give it a refresh, you know, that was that moment. Do I put more money into it, or do I keep that charm? And of course the charm won. So
the charm is so authentic though. I remember I always dream about the bread in paper bags on the table.
Oh,
Mandolin. It's so delicious. And I don't know if that is, you put the bread in the bags because that's like keeps it fresher, or because when you opened, maybe you had no money for bread baskets, but there's something about the bread in the paper bags that I'm like, this is so charming and authentic. And it's something that's stuck with me, you know, after my few meals at Mandolin. I'm like, I'll never forget about the bread in the paper bags.
Yeah.
So it really does touch your customers, which is awesome.
I think for both customers of Basic Kitchen and Mandolin, you have in common, obviously, superb food and service, but the ambience is more transportive than a lot of restaurants that we go to. It really sticks with you.
So you touched on this, both of you guys, but you both work with your husbands. Super briefly, how do you guys split up your roles? And is it combative, or is it always pretty peaceful?
Okay, you go for this one. No, you
Okay. So I guess what I always say is, it's really good we do different things, right? So if we were both in touch on the design, we were both doing the development and restaurant side, I think we would be at each other. But we both do very different things, and we rely on each other big time with advice. But and I love how much we're entwined in each other's kind of life with everything. But no, it works because we do different things, and we also know how to read each other when you like don't want to talk about work at all.
Do you have rules about not talking about work, like on weekends or after hours, or no?
I think that would be hard, but we definitely, I think we've done it long enough now. You're just like, it's Friday, it's the weekend. There's no need to talk about it.
Yep. How about you, Anastasia?
pretty much the same. I think, you know, when Kate and Ben were in Miami, we had a chance to sit down, the four of us, with Ahmed as well. And like, we realized then that it's pretty much the same. We have distinctive roles, and we were respectful of them. But at the same time too, even though Ben and Ahmed are like the operators, they also have great taste. So we kind of, and, you know, and Kate, I'm sure, you know, as we have our opinions on that other side too, but we know, like, I know I can speak for myself that I know that I know where to draw the line, and it's something that you take upon yourself. You know, you can't be good at everything, and nor do you want to. You have to really focus and stay focused on that area. And I prefer to do what I'm doing, and he's better at what he does. So it allows us to, but I have to say, I love working with Ahmed, my husband. I love, like, you know, bouncing ideas off of each other. And we, like, it's our life, you know, when we travel, we eat through a city, we get inspiration everywhere we go. So it's something that we share in common, and it strengthens us that way. And I think, I think it also, we have a common goal where, you know, we're looking out for each other. So we push each other. And when there are times too, because it's, you know, it's an industry that you share your life with other people all the time. So, you know, when I'm worn out, he's there to, you know, pick up the pieces. And when he's worn out, I'm there to, like, cheer him on too. So that really helps as well.
I agree that, like, when he's down, I'm usually up. And then when I'm down, he's usually up. Isn't it funny kind of how that works?
Totally.
Yeah.
We talk about
it really is really nice.
But work wives, someone just asked us that exact same question last week, and we were saying it's the same thing. Like through
Yeah.
COVID, especially on my hardest day, Lizzie's got a smile on her face, and on her hardest day,
So
I've got a
good.
smile on my
Totally.
face, and it's so true.
Anastasia, you were just talking about eating your way through a city and traveling and getting inspiration abroad. And we are obsessed with your home store, Mrs. Mandolin. My dress came from there. It's amazing. And I'm wondering, Catherine and I, as you know, do fortune finds on our website, which is finds from our travels, but admittedly, it is a passion project and not a revenue driver.
Not a big revenue.
Not a big revenue driver. I'm wondering for you, if you set Mrs. Mandolin up with like a business plan and financial plan in place, or if it was more just kind of a passion project and how you balance trying to make money from that. Because I imagine most of the money comes from the restaurant. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. It started as a passion project, but I did take it quite seriously. So it took a little while before we could execute it. And I remember being frustrated about that, you know, but you have to, you know, timing is everything. And now I look back, it's been 2 years, and I look back at the initial, you know, as I started out and what the hopes of it to be. Like with any business, you have to be super adaptable, but we were able to really create something that was viable and also sustainable, which and that's because what I did do was, just like all projects, you know, started with a mood board and then a business plan. What happened though was this original space wasn't ready yet from what we wanted, where we were supposed to be, and it was supposed to be a little bit more food oriented. So the retail side, which was only supposed to be 20% of the business, 80% coming from food, which is our core, ended up I had to like adjust the concept so that we didn't have to build a full kitchen in this space. And to my surprise, there were a lot of people responding to the fashion accessories and homewares. And this was, as I said, this was 2 years ago. Today, home is a really important, a lot of businesses are shifting from fashion and putting their concentration into home for obvious reasons. But when we were doing this, you know, many people were saying to me, you know, are you sure you want to get into this business? Brick and mortar is dying. And I always believed that brick and mortar, if it was done well with a sense of experience behind it, that people are still craving it. It's still part of like the spirit of a city and that point of view. And, you know, we also have all this in common, but we started our post-university days in New York City. And I remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, like just being so inspired by these shops and there being a point of view. And for us, scaling the restaurant was just going to be too difficult. You know, it's a huge operation. So we thought that we can kind of create a next way to branch off by having another experience. And that's where we included all the things I love. So food, fashion, homewares, all under one roof.
Do people, I mean, I know when I could not go into a place like Mrs. Mandolin and not leave without a tabletop and fashion purchases. Are you finding pre-COVID that your Mandolin customer and your Mrs. Mandolin customer are one and the same? Is someone waiting to get seated at dinner and they go and shop? Or are people finding Mrs. Mandolin and shopping there irrespective of whether they're eating at the restaurant?
Originally it was, and it was, you know, I mean, I was fortunate to already have a following with the restaurant. So I knew that we would have a built-in audience, but within, I would say 6 months, it helped us from a cross promotional way to get the name out or the brand out. But to be honest with you, it had its own clientele and following, and people were coming as a destination just to Mrs. Mandolin. That came as a surprise to me. That was like shocking. I really like couldn't believe. Remember our first Art Basel that we went through, and people were coming to the shop, and right away I'd be like, "Oh, do you have reservations at Mandolin?" They're like, "No, we came to hang out at your store." And
Awesome.
And I was like, my God, I would run back to the back, and I was so excited about it. But there have been, you know, there have been developments since COVID. And one of them was that our lease was up. This was supposed to be our temporary space, and we were supposed to move into our permanent space. The permanent space is not ready, but our lease was up, and we were able to go month to month, you know, and I had already established the space and the following. But being home, guys, and just having that time to really think and reset and spend time with my family and myself, and realizing that like, how can I juggle all of this? Like, what makes sense? And are people really going to be going out and shopping at this time? So we had to naturally, half of the capacity at the restaurant was, we were going to lose half of the capacity anyway. That included the indoor seating. We didn't put any indoor seating. We're fortunate that we have the outside. So we moved Mrs. Mandolin into the back house of Mandolin. So for those of you that don't know, we have an outdoor courtyard, and then there was an indoor seating portion, which was actually a little residential house. So we put Mrs. Mandolin into the back. And at first I was nervous about the move, but it actually feels like it always belonged there. And it really created one solid vision.
Do you think that would be a permanent move post-COVID?
I don't know. It's like, we're actually considering, we'll see. People are still asking for the clothes. Of course, we couldn't add that element, but it does feel like it lives well there. Like, now you feel the extension of the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Before they felt like two different businesses. And one thing is, I'm actually happy to be back at Mandolin again. Right. So I'm there, I see our patrons, our regulars, and all that. And it's just so much more manageable, and it feels complete.
Yeah.
You can see how the body is subconscious. I mean, I obviously had like something in mind, but it feels like it's part of Mandolin.
I think it's so impressive how you've adapted, and I'm sure it wasn't easy schlepping all that product from one space to another space and resetting up this beautiful environment. But as female business owners, we all know a thing or two about schlepping. And yeah. I know you guys did a lot of adaptations too with developing basic boxes where you were doing takeout. And Kath and I couldn't believe it, because like in a matter of a few days, it seemed like you had like a branded box, IG videos to go along with the branded box, a full menu that went in that. And I know, Anastasia, you also developed a full takeout menu where you didn't have one before. Mm-hmm. Was that like this crazy chaotic process of figuring out how to survive, or did it kind of come naturally because you were like, I just have to do this? Like, how did you guys deal with those adaptations?
Yeah, I feel like it's that idea of like, and I think Anastasia, probably you would say the same, where you just kind of go into it. You just have to do it. You're not going to give up. I'm not going to give up. Yeah. So with the boxes, we just had great friends who were willing to help us with the packaging, and we kind of already, it's, the sad thing is we, so much of our business was catering for offices, and obviously those aren't around in office anymore as much. So we had our to-go kind of doing really well, but we really wanted it to be good for families who, you're home all week. You don't want to go to the grocery store as much. So you want to do some meal planning. And that was, we pushed it to have bigger portions, so you can freeze them and put them in the oven. And I think that's what took a lot of time and effort, was all the testing in the kitchen.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But Ben had always wanted to do something like this. In England, they have this company, Charlie Bingham, and his stuff is so cool. It's freezable, and it all comes in this kind of like compostable container. And it's still like beautiful colors and delicious curries and like shepherd's pie. And whenever we go to visit his family, we would always stock up on that stuff. And he's like, I really want to do this with basic. So COVID gave us a minute, because I think it was like March 17th, and then we had to fire a lot of people, but then, had our management staff was furloughed for a few weeks. We came up with some ideas. We had 8 a.m. Zoom meetings every morning.
Oh my gosh.
And then we're back in the kitchen after a few weeks, and out came the boxes. So yeah.
It's just incredible, like what you have to do when you have to do it.
And Anastasia, was your experience with launching Mr. Mandolin and a takeout program, which didn't previously exist, was it the same thing, sink or swim, and we're just going to take this opportunity to pull the trigger?
Yeah, very, very similar to what Kate was saying, like that, I think during these times, it shows you like the resilience within ourselves, and just kind of adapting to it by asking yourself. Like, I remember just being at home and saying, like, what are the things that we need right now? What are the things that are missing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Realizing that there's a market for it and going for it. It's just like, this is the time I feel that there was no, that there are no rules and there's no judgment,
Mm-hmm. Totally.
You just go with it. And see what happens, see what catches. And because we really are in survival mode. And we're also, the thing is, what a lot of people don't understand too is like, of course, we're looking out for ourselves and our family and their well-being, but we're also looking out for our entire team, you know, and their families and their jobs. And how can we recreate those jobs? When we started to rehire the team to take on, you know, start doing takeout as well, which as we mentioned earlier, the Mandolin was never doing. And we had to start testing that and how would it travel and what travels well. And there's certain things, a lot of things on our menu that don't travel well at all. And then realizing some of the market items that people were asking us for, like, no, we don't want the salad. Can we just have the tomatoes, you know? So we started incorporating a lot of that because people were cooking at home, hence, you know, the programming that Kate and Ben put together, which I think is brilliant, you know? But we started to we were in survival mode 100%.
I think so many of the people we've spoken to who are other entrepreneurs and creatives have talked about the survival mode and the sink or swim. I think your point, Anastasia, about the no judgment is a new point we've heard, and it's amazing because that is one of the reasons why in times of crisis you get incredible innovation, not only because of the need to survive, but also because what do you have to lose? There is no judgment. You're throwing spaghetti at the wall, you're hoping it sticks. And I think that the fact that there is no judgment kind of makes us all braver to, you know, launch things. Lizzie and I launched DIY bead kits for kids. Like, we would have never done that in a normal circumstance, but every time we would put them on our website, they would sell out. And so we're all learning things that maybe we wouldn't have had the guts or the innovation to think about before. And we kind of want to talk about innovation and you guys as community members, because you both employ a lot of people. So I think both of you have in common a very strong bond with your teams as families. I think both of you probably care about your teams like families, do meals with your teams like families, sort of you bring that to the table. And then also with regard to your greater community. Kate, we can remember being at Basic Kitchen for some incredible fundraisers for North Charleston urban farmers and for different groups that maybe have more issues with food access than the three of us, four of us do. So with all of the Black Lives Matters protests and all of the recent sort of reasonable and incredibly overdue protests, how are you guys thinking about making your restaurants even stronger sort of community examples and community leaders?
So yeah, to touch on the point about Jermaine, so that dinner that you guys were there for was for Jermaine Jenkins, who has Fresh Future Farm, which is so cool. And it basically just addresses lack of fresh produce in a low income area, which is North Charleston is mostly low income. And she's so cool. She built this entire farm. The residents of the area staff it. And she has a little grocery store on site, and she does, you know, she teaches young kids in the area about food, and there's cooking classes. And so we did this fundraiser so she could afford some more land and afford to just run her farm since it's a nonprofit. And then, you know, and you touched on a point of like, how are you going to do better with your restaurant? It's interesting because we always were doing fundraisers, no matter your skin color. We're always behind our community. You know, we did this salad project where all the proceeds went to the Green Heart Project, which is for schools, and they, you know, teach kids how to have gardens and all about school, or all about food as well. But I think we were already doing that, and we'll continue to do that. So I don't think that because this happened, we're going to change anything. I will say we really took the protest very, you know, we shut for 2 days so everyone could peacefully protest on our team. We have a very loud, you know, beautiful staff. And so it was, I think where it became very painful as a business owner was, you know, when the looting and the destruction began, and we were right next to H&M and their whole storefront was smashed. We thankfully didn't get smashed, but I had many friends that did. So, you know, it's sad when it took to that. I understand that makes the voice louder, but we take it very seriously. It's a social revolution that's happening, and I think it's overdue for sure. But this is something we've always practiced and will continue to.
Totally. Anastasia, do you feel like the same way? Your values have always been what they've been and you don't need to change, or do you feel like there's different things the restaurant can do to make more of a change in your neighborhood?
When this happened, it almost more so than when we found out about the pandemic. I mean, to me, this is the pandemic. Like, this is something that is just intolerable, and it's time that we do speak up about it. I took to speaking up on my personal platform, but as a restaurant, I thought about it, and I wanted to say something because our staff is extremely diverse. Mm-hmm. And but we, because of that, I also thought about, well, we've always stood behind that. We've always been. It's something that is part of our company culture and ethos, that we're anti-racism, anti-discrimination. We treat everybody with the utmost respect as our family, every single person we check in with. And so it's something that I think it's important to walk your talk. Right now for us, what's important even more is to be a little bit more vocal, and to be much more transparent about our messaging.
Yeah.
That's something that I want to do in the right way, but not because, to Kate's point, not because we're just jumping onto something. These are part of our values. This is my personal values, not just for my business values. This is how we live, how we're raising our child. So that's why it hit home so much, because it's not something I don't believe in this. I couldn't believe that I live in a country that's so divided, but it's time to really just keep walking our talk.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
I've also been we consider Mandolin a community center, the official community center of Miami, and it's a safe place. And so right after this happened, I got to work thinking about what I want to do. And then I looked around that afternoon and who was sitting there, and it was such a diverse crowd that I was proud at that moment. I realized, I was like, this speaks for itself. Yeah. Not to necessarily say anything. I think our actions already have been so strong that people of color and that of different, of all different backgrounds feel comfortable to keep coming and dining at our establishment. So that says it all.
That gives me goosebumps, and it feels so true. I feel like I was having a year or two ago, having lunch with my husband, Peter, in the courtyard at Mandolin, and there were fashion moguls, and then there's families with young kids. And as you say, it's a range of colors and range of ages. And I think you have people who may take a trip to Mandolin, or you have people who go there every day for lunch because they're in your neighborhood. And being able to cater to such a huge range of people, literally gives me goosebumps, because it's really touching. I mean, it's something we talk about a lot. We have a pretty niche demographic with our customers, and the fact that you guys are able to reach so many people with your restaurants is really extraordinary.
Especially both being in the South. It's not like you're necessarily in places that are always the most diverse or welcoming. Obviously, Miami's an international city, but Charleston, not so much.
It's divided. And it's funny because in Miami, we straddle the design district and Little Haiti. Yeah. So we're kind of right in the middle, and it's we couldn't be more neutral. I think we kind of straddle all of it, and and we brought values, my Northeast values, and the idea of, and also I'm of Greek background, Amit's Turkish. We were divided by religious reasons, so we were always very much those type of people that just believe in love, only love.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Okay, getting on to something a little bit lighter. Catherine and I are both in the process of renovating homes, and you guys create these magical spaces. So we're wondering, especially for people who are spending more time at home, if you each have some tricks on decorating spaces or restaurants, or tips on where to spend and where to save. Kate, I know you've helped us so much with our renovations, and you'll be like, don't spend your money on that. It doesn't matter. You can get that thing at Home Depot or whatever. But insider tricks, because you guys are both so good at this.
Do you want, Anastasia, do you want to start?
Oh, you start, Kate.
Hey, it is true. I have been texting with the
everything
twins.
you do. Come on.
Yeah, right. Take notes. No, I've been texting with the twins every day about both of their houses. I mean, every other day maybe, right?
We're very annoying.
No, but it's funny. The questions are Catherine's questions are definitely more like broad, and Lizzie's are like, what exact, like LED bulb, like what's the Kelvin that I need to get? And I'm like, oh my God.
So they're
questions.
personalities.
The lighting's important, right?
I was gonna say,
in my
I loved, yeah, I loved your questions that you sent before, and when I was reading over them last night, I was laughing because you're like, what are the tips, and whether it's a hotel project or someone's home, and both times I was like, lighting, dimmers, and I think that's, I don't know. I mean, there's a few things that you had asked there. It's like definitely less is more, and spend the money in the kitchen and where you spend the most time, and like get a great sofa and a great coffee table and a dining table, and don't buy a bunch of crap to like fill the house. Definitely beautiful pieces, less of them, and just like collect over time, because I hate rushing that. But in the restaurant and at home, man, it's like good lighting, not all overhead, that glow. Like we have these beautiful Urban Electric globes outside, in Basic Kitchen, and that's all I wanted in the window, because you get that like dim perfect at night, and I've like walked every staff member through like the perfect dim at the right hour, which Anastasia, I know you've done too.
Yeah.
And someone walks by and they're like, what are they doing in there? I want to go in there and drink and dance too.
That's awesome.
So it's lighting for sure, and quality pieces. Less is more.
Anastasia?
I would say, that like, don't be afraid to incorporate all the things you love. Somehow it just ends up working together. People feel like they have to, coordinate a piece or find a complementary piece. But if you really love something and it doesn't, it somehow ends up working, you'll make it work within that space. I've done a lot of shifting and, kind of redoing my shelves and shifting things around. So it's so fun how you don't need to spend a lot of money you can shop your own house, like changing the pillows, the throw pillows that you have in your bedroom and putting them on the sofa, and throwing things in a different room, or trying a new color combination. And it's just stuff you have, repurposing and reusing is so important. I think. And
I
like
read an article this morning about a guy who travels his house, and he said, my back patio is very Bali, my inside is very West Africa, my upstairs was inspired by Ghana. But it was so cool because none of us can travel right now. So to
I
take
love that.
rooms and have inspiration from all of us have
I
traveled
love
a lot.
shopping your house.
Shopping
too.
your house and traveling your house are great concepts.
Well, I had a girlfriend of mine who she was trying to shift things around, and so I went and helped her. And I came home and I was like, wow, that looks really sophisticated. My house doesn't look like grown up enough. So I wanted my home to look a little bit more grown up, and so that's precisely what I did. I started like taking things away.
Yeah.
I'm not as good of an editor as you are, Kate. Like every time
We are the chief not.
I'm like, oh, but then I'm like, wait, I just, I need somebody to say like, you really don't need that extra tchotchke. But what I did do is like started moving things, and I rehung my art in a different way. And I used to have a gallery wall, for example, and then I ended up putting one piece, and that in itself elevated the space. Moved a few books around, took away a couple of pillows, not added this time. And that made a huge difference. It does. And it's so the energy of the space, I think Kate said something earlier about how creating this, like, it's a feeling, like when you said about your early days in set design. I always say that I say, like, I create emotional spaces. Like, it's a feeling that you come in. And I think that comes with bringing in the layers, for sure. And vintage, don't be afraid of vintage, especially in Miami, where, to me, those pieces, those heirloom pieces, whether it's something from your grandmother or from your travels, or, from the thrift shop, it doesn't have to be like a very expensive thing to make the whole room pop. And and good lighting, vintage lighting.
Good lighting.
You've been spending a lot of time in your house. Do you have one or two favorite pieces in your home that either reminds you of a travel or was an investment piece or something that really sparks joy for you that that you've been getting to hang out in a lot? A favorite piece in your house, Kate, if you
I know the dog is killing me right now.
No, it's all good.
I had to let her out.
Any anecdotal favorite piece?
You know, the flag behind me, that was at our wedding. Actually, Lizzie made this flag. There you go. And that was like hanging from the top of this huge tent or whatever, the dining tent thing at the wedding. And every time I look at it every morning, because I knew I wanted something really graphic there. And because we were fortunate enough to, you know, gut the house and be able to make it exactly how we wanted. Like this piece, I made this wall exactly that length so I could put that piece there. And that wall, I knew I wanted something graphic, and that piece makes me so happy every time I look at it.
I love that. And I also think it's so cool because that piece probably cost us like $25 to make, like
Yeah.
Michael's, some paint pens, but like you can do these things, create like a really cool graphic piece, have
Totally.
it sentimental, and it doesn't have to be expensive, and it's something that totally sparks joy.
Absolutely.
What I find so fun too is how, you know, those, when you look around and there's a memory behind everything. Like from I still have pieces that I moved from Toronto to New York, and then that one piece, you know, you toss each time, but like then you have that one piece that came with you, and you refer back to it, and it's just like that's really the story of your life.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know if this happens to you guys, but people think like my home, it looks like Mandolin. They're like, oh, is your home all blue and white? I happen to be sitting in places like I love colors and pops of color, and there's a lot of sentimental pieces here, and again, most of it's just vintage and stuff that I picked up, but it works together. And I think like that's what really, those layering pieces are so important.
Anastasia, during this time when it's harder to go out to do vintage or thrift shopping, are you a big Etsy and eBayer? Like, do you get in black holes?
It's like
nonstop.
Like Cherish, Etsy, and you know, eBay is like basically, you know, I'll be up at night. It's like, what are you reading? What are you looking at? I'm like, nothing. I'm like finding light fixtures, go figure, that I use, but I just like fall in love with something and kind of design something in my head around it.
I love that.
For fun.
I love that. I'm right there with you, girl.
We just had an attendee ask any tips on good places to look for pieces like tables or chairs for a restaurant. Do you guys have any cool sources other than?
And if COVID hadn't happened, like we went to Brimfield and got so much good stuff for Post House. Do you think, Anastasia, did you guys do any like art antique fair searching?
No, not during this time. I've actually been trying to reuse what we have.
Yeah.
Different ways, like, because we had to, you know, when we reopened the space that was our old diner space, and then now we have Mr. Mandolin, and we wanted to give it its own identity. So it's funny how we just changed things around, added some painted things, and it gave a whole new life to it. But yeah, I think for restaurants, it's great to go secondhand 100% if you can. You know, and if you can't, like, it can get really costly, especially if you're looking to buy so many chairs. So, you know, with tables, I always suggest find a, you know, solid base. The base doesn't really matter. It's like
totally
at all, like get a generic base on one of those restaurant supply stores and then have fun with the top.
That's such good advice. And that's good advice for outdoor people at home too.
Yeah, I also think like the thing that I have loved being able to design restaurants and homes is you learn practicality is everything in a restaurant. Like obviously you want it to feel sexy and lovely, but like things just get hounded. And that's something I've learned over the years. Some choices I made with basic, we had to redo a little bit, repaint, darker color, whatever. And then now Post House, our newest project, it's so sweet. Ben said to me when we finished last week, he was like, this place feels like it could withstand a lot of drunken patrons and children, which is which was a very big compliment, actually.
Also amazing because as I've seen it, it feels so special, and I don't want to use precious in a bad way, but it does have lots of precious details. So the fact that you could make a perfect paisley lampshade, but yet think that someone could have a drunken night there and you're not scared about your lampshade.
Those lampshades, I did make extra because those are going to go down for sure. But you know what I did learn? We did them on Basic Kitchens bar, and I had like regular incandescent bulbs, and some drunk guy pushes the lampshade and then the thing goes up in flames. So LED bulbs on those now.
What I love about all your projects, Kate, is that they feel residential. You know, it feels like this could be like, I want to live here. And that's so important.
Thanks.
That's what I think subconsciously why, you know, when you have that comfort, when you feel comfortable, it's such an important element and part of design, and people overlook that. Because that goes back to that emotional part of it. It's what brings people back, you know, or wants them to stay longer rather, you know, whichever way you want to look at it. But that's what's so beautiful. I mean, I'm following along obviously and seeing all the pictures.
Thanks.
Thinking about what we were going to do this summer, right before, it was the day before Catherine emailed me about doing this call, and I was going to reach out to you regardless because we were thinking to go do a road trip to Charleston, and we haven't been trying to go.
Still come.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening to us talking about Kate's new project, which is called the Post House Inn, and as she mentioned, it's 7 rooms and a restaurant. And Catherine and I got some sneak peeks in the beginning of March pre-COVID, but it's just so cool. Kate, as we know, but maybe not all our listeners do, you have had to delay the opening. How has that worked, both from an emotional perspective, but also from a logistical perspective? I imagine you had staff lined up and all of that. How have you been dealing with that?
Man, I mean, plainly put, it's been a bitch for sure. We had a dozen and a half staff ready to go for June 26th, which was the opening. And you know, it's sad that, you know, these spiking the cases, major spikes down here in Charleston, and it's, you know, we just definitely have played the safer part where we're pushing it back to mid-August now. It's tough because the neighborhood is like, it's like the Cheers of the neighborhood, right? The Old Village, which is in Mount Pleasant. So it's just over the bridge from downtown, in between the beach and downtown. And man, we get like 12, 14 people a day coming in. Like, when are you opening? There's one guy was standing outside the window being like, can I please have a beer? Like, people are just so excited, and it's like they love it so much. But that made us be even more careful because we know when we open our doors, there is not going to be social distancing, and like we need to. It's no joke, you know. Someone gets sick and you have to shut the restaurant, and you have to wait. Everyone gets tested, and we have a massive outdoor dining element, which is great, and that will open with that. But right now, it's just the core management staff, and we're just kind of taking it day by day. And honestly, like I don't know anyone who's like killing it at this whole new normal. We're just kind of doing the best we can.
I mean, both of you guys are in places where you opened, if I'm not mistaken, you both had to sort of yo-yo and close again, and now slowly reopen again. And I think that so many entrepreneurs have told us what's really going to kill us is doing an opening and getting normal again, and then closing.
Throwing out all the food. I mean, no restaurant can last that many open and shuts.
Right. So you're now proceeding with caution. Anastasia, where are you guys? You're doing the outdoor dining, and you're just kind of taking it as slowly as possible?
Well, we, the thing, what has helped us is that we're supplementing a lot of our business now with so I think from the hospitality end, you have to offer both in order to kind of sustain yourself, you know. One isn't enough anymore. So that also allowed us to bring back our staff, most of our staff, because, you know, the ones that can't be on the floor necessarily are helping out with takeout and deliveries and things like of that sort. But we, you know, I think what we started having to incorporate, because we did have a scare happen to us, and it hit really close to home. We didn't think that this could happen to us, you know, and it did, because we know our own practices, but it made us be even more transparent. And now we've incorporated weekly swabbing. We do weekly testing. with all of our employees. It's an added expense, but it's one that we wanted to take on for our own peace of mind. You know, I always say to everybody, I'm a mother first. You know, I'm not just looking to make money, and I'm not a corporation in that way. And I have to take care of ourselves, our staff, my child. And so it was for our own peace of mind. And of course, our patrons too, you know, that's so important too. But the safety comes from all of us taking responsibility. Transmission doesn't happen necessarily with the people wearing, the ones who are not. Right. So we're all putting ourselves at risk, you know, and we have to be conscientious of that. I don't actually go out. I was saying this earlier. I don't go out other than having to go to work. I try to limit that. But at the same time, it's very important to be supporting, you know, our businesses, and we have to keep going. We don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You know, we have to make a living. We have to, you know, keep afloat. And we have a lot of other people that, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, that we're also helping as well. They're helping us and we're helping them. It's part of the community building.
I agree with that 100%.
I know the answer for Kate because she and her husband Ben helped us with the process, but were you guys also able to get the PPP?
Yes, we were. Yeah. We were in the same boat where we had to let people off in the beginning. We were away when this happened. We were in Europe when it happened. So we were kind of stuck there. Had our son Alex been with us, we probably would have stayed, but we had already seen what was going on, and we knew the US was going to be hit hard as well. But it wasn't yet, I mean, it wasn't in full effect. Right. So when we returned back, we were lucky enough to get onto a flight. They rerouted us. And when we returned back, we saw that the restaurant was packed. And even though everyone was still quite relaxed about it, with the spike started happening in New York, and we were the first restaurant to make the call to shut down. Wow. You know, and our staff, believe it or not, what we were apprehensive about was really more our team. Yeah. But of course, I wanted to make sure that they were protected as well. And they were all so happy that we were looking out for their well-being.
Wow. So yeah, the safety of it is so important. And I remember Kate saying the same thing to us, and you can elaborate, Kate, but you said that when Ben called people in to say, like, these are the next steps, you know, these are the layoffs or the furloughs that we have to do, people weren't necessarily angry. They were saying, we want to see this restaurant survive. Like, we'll be together again. We want to see you guys survive. We know as business owners, you're doing what you have to do, which like brings tears to my eyes, because it really shows how much of a family you are, how you're all in this together.
Well, and hearing you guys tell us stories about how some of your furloughed employees were the first people to give to the Basic Kitchen GoFundMe, when they're the people who have just lost their jobs, nothing gives me more chills than hearing about what kind of family you guys have built. If people, you know, have limited.
It's true. And that's what made it the hardest, is like we're a big family and we care about each other, number one. And as Anastasia said, I'm a mom at first as well, and everybody, sorry, the dog is barking so much. Let me just let her in.
We get it. It's all good. It's all good.
She's a dog mom first.
She's a dog mom first.
She's killing me. I should have had her out of the house with the kid and the husband too. But no, it's so cool because we're, you know, on the weekends, Oscar and I are there eating brunch with everybody. In the evenings after work, you know, we're having a beer at the bar with everyone. And I feel so lucky with the team we have, and they're all like family. So that, man, Benj, that was so hard that day. And he sat there and cried, and like everybody was so wonderful and, you know, as good as they could be. And we've just been, you know, really communicative over everything. We don't have everyone back, but we have a good amount. And yeah, we're just going to continue and go slowly, and like, you know, not do a lot of this, just, you know, an easy does it.
Yeah, I think that's so important.
It's time to be compassionate, and, you know, I've seen a lot of goodness through it. It's just a really nice thing, you know, and it brought us all together in a different way, you know, and we're communicating different as well. And We're trying to just do the right thing. That's all it comes down to. It's like,
So well said. So well said.
when we come home, all of us, as business owners, we just think like, okay, what's the right thing to do? Like, I remember when we found out that one of the employees was in fact positive, I'm like, what do we keep it? Obviously the first thing we did was we had to tell the team, and we shut down the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And when, but then, it was really challenging to go out there and go public and be so vulnerable and transparent, but
Totally.
and you just have to keep saying, do the right thing, and that's what we're just trying to do.
Yeah.
We don't know, this uncertainty, I think, is really the biggest challenge for everyone, and not just business owners, but it's the uncertainty. So it's like we're challenging ourselves as humans to live day by day, and
I think you guys are both tremendous examples for other entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs out there. You have demonstrated vulnerability, but also extraordinary strength, which is amazing.
And innovation. Real innovation, which is what's really incredible.
You're also both moms. You know that Catherine and I are about to be moms as well. We're about to run out of time, but any quick tips for balancing business, especially with kids at home right now, which I know is crazy. Anastasia, you have a 6-year-old and you're not sure if he's going to be going back to school in the fall. So any
Anastasia, you go first on this one.
Wisdom.
I think honestly, you just, when you're a business owner, your child just is part of that business, like part of that life.
Okay.
You'll see that your babies are going to end up growing up being at work with you. And I think that actually ends up, you end up being a better role model that way, as opposed to trying to separate the two lives. Like, the other day, Alex he's 6 now, and he went up to somebody and he shook their hand. He's like, very nice to meet you. And they're like, oh my God, your child is so polite. I'm like, he's a restaurant baby,
I love it. He's the host with the most.
But, it's the only way. And, sometimes it's not easy to do that either, but that's how you would you get to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And it's better to have them with you and miss out on those moments. And actually, I realized it even more so being at home, that how much of those moments we do miss out on. And I don't want to do that. That's something I don't want to do anymore.
Yeah, I think it's a constant struggle for sure. Agreed, Anastasia. Oscar is he's at that restaurant so much, and everybody, he comes in, they get the French fries ready. He's and they bring him right up. But I think my mom said something to me when I first had him, and she was like, good luck, because now you're always going to have this guilt, and the guilt will always be there. So I think, and it's, when you have a kid and you're also a working mom, you're just always going to feel like, oh, I should be home, or I should be the mom that's got everything ready and 100% for him. But as you said, I think you're more inspiring to him down the line with that, and you're happier and you're fulfilled in both places. But the balance is hard. But I think once you give up on trying to be perfect, and you're just living, some days are good, some days are tougher. But the biggest thing is being present with him and not having my phone. I'd rather have 2 hours of just Oscar and me time than 4 hours of my phone, watching cartoons. Don't try and do it all. Just him time, and then go work and have an awesome, babysitter or friend that can help.
Oh my God. We'll be calling both of you girls.
Yeah, I'm ready.
It's so important not to lose your identity,
Yes.
At the same time, listen to yourself too, because I remember feeling like I wanted to be a superwoman and get back to work. Even if if you're not ready, it's okay too. Those things will wait. So listen to what your body needs, what your heart needs. And then I think that's the best advice I could give.
I like that.
Always keep your own identity, do what you love. And that you need that too. Yes, you're becoming a mom, but you also have to be able to fulfill those other things inside of you.
Not forget about yourself.
Lizzie, Fortunato has been such a big part of our identity for the past 15 years that the idea of balancing it with anything else feels intimidating. And I think exactly what you just said, Anastasia, is gold.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that to.
You girls are going to nail it.
We have very husbands who will do all.
Oh my God. Everything you do is
we have
Please. That kid's gonna have beautiful jewels on.
Those kids
Adorned.
Yeah.
Okay, so now for the few fun questions, because we have like a minute left, but for each of you, favorite cocktail?
Gin and tonic.
Ooh, I love a gin and tonic too. I'll say Paloma.
Ooh, good one.
Paloma. Favorite playlist or song at your restaurant when you're, you know, in that, having that great night at Mandolin or at Basic Kitchen? What is playing on the sound system?
There is this song by Lord Echo called Thinking of You, and everyone needs to listen to it after this talk.
Wonderful.
Well, we don't really play music at Mandolin. It would be Greek or Turkish tunes, so I don't think you guys would know them anyway. But when we had Gregory's, we played a ton of like Smiths and all the good stuff that gets me in.
Yeah.